Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is episode 2 of our Before AGI series, and you've given us some really dense, fascinating source material to dig into. We're looking at what might be the highest stakes global competition happening right now, the geopolitical battle over AI supremacy. So our mission today is really to unpack this. We're not just talking about, small tech updates. The sources are very clear. AI isn't just tech anymore. It's the new battlefield for economic and political clout. That's a direct quote. And some experts are now saying control over AI infrastructure. It's as critical as control over territory once was. I mean, that's a huge statement. The fight's in the data centers now.
It really is. And what's striking is how fast AI is fundamentally reshaping power itself. This isn't some far-off thing. It's driving massive capital flows today. You look at the stock market. JP Morgan confirmed it. Pretty much all the big U.S. stock gains, the capital spending since 2022, it's driven by AI leaders. It's the engine. And that power translates straight into military capability. Ray Dalio, the investor, he put it bluntly, the winner of the technology war is going to win all wars.
Wow, that quote really does stop you in your tracks. If winning the tech war means winning all wars, then the question isn't just about ethics or regulation anymore, is it? It's about who physically controls the resources to build and run this stuff.
Exactly. The whole focus shifts. It's not just about who has the smartest algorithm anymore. It's about who owns the physical means to deploy it at scale. And that leads us straight to these 3 critical, you could call them strategic choke points, that really determine who leads in AI.
Right. So if AI is the engine, what are its essential parts? The sources point to 3: chips the hardware, data the fuel, and talent the brains. And controlling these 3 seems to be the primary lever of AI dominance now. So let's start with the hardware. This chip war is really escalating, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's highly strategic and, frankly, pretty aggressive. The U.S. playbook has 2 main parts. Domestically, you've got big subsidies like the GPS Act to boost manufacturing at home, but internationally, strict export controls. They're targeting the most advanced AI chips, yes, but also, crucially, the equipment needed to make them.
The actual machines, like the incredibly complex ones that print the circuits.
Precisely. We're talking about things like EUV lithography, extreme ultraviolet lithography. That's the super specialized multi-billion-dollar gear you need for the tiniest, most powerful circuits in modern AI chips. By restricting access to that, the U.S. is effectively trying to keep China's domestic chip makers stuck on older, less efficient 14-nanometer technology.
And the cutting edge now is what, 3 nanometers?
Right. So 14 millimeters is generations behind. It's a deliberate, massive technological speed bump they're trying to impose. And
China's countermove. They're not taking it lying down, obviously.
Not at all. They're throwing enormous resources at it. A huge semiconductor fund, something like $47.5 billion just to fast-track self-reliance.
And that policy move in late 2025, banning foreign AI chips from state data centers, that's a big signal.
It's a huge signal. It's basically ripping foreign tech out of their core government infrastructure, a very forceful move towards decoupling in that specific area.
And hovering over all this hardware talk is Taiwan.
Yes. TSMC, the company based there, makes the vast majority of the world's most advanced AI chips. It's probably the single most critical node in the entire supply chain, which of course makes the island this intense geopolitical focal point. The stakes there are almost unimaginably high for global tech.
Okay, so that's the hardware war. Let's shift to the fuel data. It's definitely the new oil, like you said, but the way countries are handling it seems to be, fragmenting things. Why is data sovereignty suddenly such a big deal?
Well, because these large AI models are incredibly data hungry. You just can't build a competitive foundation model without access to enormous diverse data sets. And we're seeing really different philosophies emerge. Take Europe. They're pushing hard for what they call AI sovereignty. Surveys are showing something like 62% of organizations there plan to use only local data, local infrastructure. It's about security, about independence.
Okay, so Europe's walling off in the sense. What about China?
China has very strict data localization laws. Certain kinds of data simply cannot leave the country. It's about state control primarily.
And the U.S. seems more market-driven, less top-down control.
That's generally the approach. More permissive, let the market lead. But this fragmentation, this divergence, it creates real risks, especially for developing nations. Analysts are starting to use the term digital colonialism.
Well, digital colonialism, how does that play out?
Well, smaller countries often lack their own robust digital infrastructure, so they end up relying on foreign providers. Maybe it's U.S. cloud giants like AWS or Azure, or maybe it's Chinese telecom networks like Huawei. Either way, they become dependent. They lose control over their own data flows, which erodes their digital sovereignty. They risk becoming just data suppliers to the big tech powers.
Right. Feeding the machine, but not really benefiting from it. That's a worrying dynamic. Okay. Choke point 3. The brains. Talent. There's this interesting asymmetry here, isn't there? China graduates way more engineers, like 1.6 million a year.
Ugh.
But the U.S. seems to hold the edge in top-tier AI researchers, like 60% of the world's best.
That's been the case, yes. The U.S. has historically had that qualitative edge, but it's under serious pressure now. We're seeing what people are calling a reverse brain drain, and it seems to be accelerating. The sources mention that in 2025 alone, at least 85 prominent scientists, mostly based in the U.S., accepted full-time jobs back in China. These aren't junior people. These are leaders in the field.
85?
Yeah.
In 1 year. That's not trivial. It's a strategic shift.
It absolutely is. It's driven by very targeted recruitment, huge funding packages, the chance to lead major state-backed projects. China is actively pulling talent.
And the irony, as the sources point out, is that while China's recruiting aggressively,
The West, particularly the U.S., sometimes seems to be shooting itself in the foot. Things like the H-1B visa caps. They're so restrictive. You have giants like Google and Microsoft actually opening major research hubs outside the U.S., London, Toronto, partly just to get around the bureaucracy and hire the international talent they need. They're spending millions just to navigate their own government's limitations.
it's kind of wild. So this intense competition over chips, data, talent, it really underscores the fundamental difference in how the U.S. and China are approaching this whole AI race. They're running completely different playbooks.
Completely different. The U.S. is largely running the Silicon Valley model. It's bottom up, driven by open innovation, free markets, and a pretty loose, often reactive regulatory approach. The big players are the private companies, OpenAI, Google, Meta, Anthropic. The government often facilitates, sometimes funds, but it leans heavily on the private sector.
And their big goal, the North Star, as the sources put it, is AGI, Artificial General Intelligence.
Right. That's the ultimate prize for many in that ecosystem. Building AI that can reason and learn broadly, like a human, not just perform narrow tasks.
Okay, so that's the U.S. model China.
China is the polar opposite. It's top-down, state-directed. Everything flows from national plans, like their goal to be the world leader in AI by 2030. The driving force is self-reliance, so you see massive central funding, state-backed champions like Huawei developing their Ascend chips, mandates to use domestic software platforms. It's very coordinated.
And both models have their pros and cons, right? The U.S. model is incredibly innovative, fast-moving.
Definitely. It can produce breakthroughs, maybe a top-down system wouldn't, but the downside can be fragmentation, maybe duplicated effort, and sometimes slower government adaptation to, say, national security risks.
And the China model
Allows for incredible mobilization. They set a goal like integrating AI across 90% of the economy by 2030, and they can direct resources very effectively towards that. But the potential downside is that rigid state control, the political directives, that can sometimes stifle the really out-of-the-box creativity you need for fundamental breakthroughs.
Okay, so different models, different strengths. But here's where one source dropped a bit of a bombshell, contradicting the idea that hardware controls are decisive. This shocking convergence. Despite the U.S. chip controls, the performance gap between the best U.S. and Chinese AI models apparently shrank dramatically, from over 9% in 2024 to just 1.7% by early 2025. How is that possible?
Yeah, that 1.7% figure is genuinely surprising. It suggests that hardware isn't the whole story, not by a long shot. What seems to be happening is algorithmic efficiency is catching up fast. Models like China's DeepSeek R1 show that clever software design, better training methods, they can significantly compensate for slightly less powerful hardware. It means algorithmic innovation might be a great equalizer here. The expectation now is that the two nations might actually run side by side in terms of model capability in the near future, even if the U.S. keeps an edge in chip manufacturing itself.
That really changes the dynamic. It's not just a hardware race. Okay, so this U.S.-China rivalry is obviously huge, but it's also forcing other countries, the middle powers, to make some tough choices, isn't it?
Absolutely. They can't just sit on the sidelines. Look at the European Union. They know they probably can't compete head-on in building the biggest foundation models, so they're using soft power, regulation. The AI Act is their big play, trying to set global standards for responsible AI. If you want access to the huge EU market, you have to comply. It's about shaping the rules of the game.
Using regulation as a strategic tool. Interesting. And then you have the Middle East doing something quite different.
Totally different. They're leveraging their wealth, turning petrodollars into tech power. Saudi Arabia's Project Transcendence, a reported $100 billion fund that's aiming to make them a massive global player in AI infrastructure, buying chips, building data centers, recruiting talent. They see an opportunity to become a new hub.
Using energy wealth to buy into the next technological wave. And India.
India's playing to its strengths, too. Huge pool of tech talent, especially AI-skilled graduates, massive amounts of data generated by its population. Initiatives like Digital India are trying to leverage that. They're positioning themselves as a key middle power, maybe in talent, maybe in specific applications.
So some middle powers are finding ways to play. But the sources also paint a pretty grim picture for much of the global south. This AI divide.
Yeah, that's a serious concern. The numbers are stark. Less than 1% of global AI funding goes to the global south. Many countries just lack the basic infrastructure, the reliable power grids, the specialized talent pipelines.
And the risk is they get locked out.
The risk is they get locked into being primarily consumers of AI developed elsewhere, rather than creators or even adapters. It reinforces that digital colonialism pattern we talked about. They might supply raw data or low-level labor, but the real economic value gets captured by the big tech hubs. It could really deepen global inequality if we're not careful.
So, bringing it all together, the message seems to be that winning the AI race brings decisive economic, political, and security advantages. It's a contest over the whole ecosystem, the physical stuff, the people, the rules, not just the code.
Exactly. It's about controlling the means of production for intelligence, essentially. And that leads us to one final, maybe overlooked choke point that was buried in the sources: energy.
Right. We touch on infrastructure, but the sheer power demands of AI, they're staggering.
They really are. Projections suggest AI could eat up 3 to 4% of total global electricity demand by 2030.
3 to 4% of global demand. That's comparable to entire countries.
It is. We're talking about energy needs on the scale of medium-sized industrialized nations, just for AI computations. This fundamentally changes the game. Suddenly, energy abundance becomes a core strategic asset for AI leadership. And you see the tech giants recognizing this. Microsoft, Google, they're not just buying power anymore. They're investing billions directly in new energy sources. Specifically, SMR's small modular nuclear reactors to provide dedicated, reliable power for their massive data centers.
They're planning to build their own mini nuclear reactors just to run their AI.
That seems to be the direction. They need guaranteed massive amounts of power.
Okay, so here's the final thought for you, for everyone listening, to really chew on based on that. If AI leadership demands that kind of energy abundance, and the biggest players are already betting on dedicated nuclear capacity, does the future of global AI dominance ultimately depend less on chips or data or even talent, and more on plain old watts? On controlling energy, something to think about. Thank you for bringing these sources to us. This was a fascinating deep dive. If you want more discussions like this, exploring the road to AGI and its impact, definitely subscribe to the Before AGI podcast. And for those who want practical tutorials, more technical insights into AI, you can check out the YouTube channel, Ochieng AI. That's Ochieng. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.